review for you now. This week I've read this book, the new book from Jo Nesbo, The Night House. A bit of a departure from Jo Nesbo's natural style, because as you know, Nesbo, unless you've been hiding under a rock for the last 20 years, you'll know that Jo Nesbo is the hugely successful crime writer of the Areole series. But with his new book, The Night House, it's a bit of a departure. It's a bit of a classic horror story with a twist. Now, the first section of this book, it's almost a book that is split into three sections, three almost different mediums. The first section, biggest part of the book, is a novella. The second section is a short story. And the third section is almost slash fiction. It's not exactly slash fiction, but it's slash fiction multiplied by 5, maybe 6. But it's all contained in the same storyline, the same central character. So the first part of this book takes part when the main character, Richard Edlund, is a child, and it's very Stephen King-esque in a sense. The opening scene, we see these two boys, Richard, our protagonist, our hero throughout the book, and stuttering character. In fact, the first line of the book, which is repeated, I'm going to try not to give too much away here, but this first line is repeated in the climax of the book, which makes perfect sense once you've read the entire thing. So the first line, you're crazy, Tom said, and I could tell he was scared, seeing as he stammered one more time than he usually does. So that's quite a creepy little scene, which is very much reminiscent of Stephen King's style in Stephen King's earlier books. If you think of the first section of the novel It, where you've got the characters during their youth, it's very reminiscent of that type of thing. Now, Richard and this stuttering Tom end up going to a telephone box which is in the middle of nowhere, and no one seems to ever question why that is, making a prank phone call. But then the telephone, the handset, promptly eats stuttering Tom. So that's how the story opens, and the first section of the book goes through this fantastic, supernatural, horrific sequence of events, in which the occurrences become even more outlandish. So then it's absolutely enthralling in a classic horror sense. Now, a lot of reviewers have said that it's got a feel of YA fiction, which is another tag that is one of these modern tags for fiction, young adult. It's a load of bullshit, really. I don't like these tags at all. I mean, back when I was a kid reading, you'd get these spinner racks in all the shops, and they had all the paperbacks on it. Stuff like Guyan Smith, who wrote really shocky, pulpy horror books. They would be classed, I suppose, as YA by modern standards. But anyway, a lot of people have said this is the first section of the book, the big section of the book, is very YA in feeling. I don't agree with that. I think it's trying to replicate a type of horror story that's set in a time or place, and that time or place is the 1980s, and it achieves what it sets out to there. It's good. It's very good. And it keeps the reader turning the page. Now, when we jaw, and I say jaw because it's not as smooth a transition as it could be onto the second section, we now many years later, and we find out that Richard is actually a best-selling author. That's the first twist. And his latest book is called The Night House. And it seems that the novella we have just read is actually the book, the best-selling book, The Night House. That makes sense at that point. Then Richard goes to a party, a school reunion, and meets up with these characters who had played such a big part in the first section of the book, which is supposedly now the book that he has written. And it gets weird again. It gets really strange again, and the reader's completely pulled, as the rug pulled from out of him before the third section, which does make sense of everything, I suppose. So yeah, I enjoyed this book very much. It's a bit both classic horror and an amazing twist. Now, just remember, without giving too much away, this is told in the first person, and we are dealing with an unreliable narrator. So that should give you an idea of what The Night House is about. But I thoroughly enjoyed The Night House. It's a cool little book. Jo Nesbo has pretty much set out, I think, what he achieved with this novel in giving us a classic horror story with a modern twist. Okay, it's not an original twist. There's nothing original about it at all. This type of thing is merry variations, and I can't mention anyone because it'd be too much of a spoiler. But suffice to say, it's not an original twist, but it's well handled. It's definitely handled. Jo Nesbo's an excellent writer. He creates wonderful character. And we mustn't forget, of course, that we are getting translations in the UK and in the States from the original text. So the translator must also be applauded. But anyway, Jo Nesbo, The Night House, highly, 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 highly recommended. And now read on.